From seemingly throwaway lines hinting at jaw-dropping events that are about to unfold, to characters' true natures being exposed under our very noses. Each of these classic movies all contained ridiculously clever details that brilliantly set the stage for the epic tale to come. I'm Gareth from Whatculture.com, and here are 10 mind-blowing hidden clues you never noticed in classic movies. Number 10, the narrator gets out of the driver's seat. Fight Club. Everybody remembers when they sat through David Fincher's Fight Club for the very first time, only to have their minds completely melted at the reveal that, spoiler, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are actually the same person. Not in real life, but come to think of it. However, the director actually planted a few cheeky clues into his classic feature that gave away this sweet twist much earlier in the flick. Away from the more obvious flashes of Tyler Durden appearing for single frames throughout the movie, and some other hints, the epic car crash in the flick also highlights the fact Durden is an extension of the narrator, as the car smashes off the road on the back of Tyler and the narrator agreeing to let go. We see the former driving the vehicle and the latter in the passenger seat. However, once the car has flipped post-collision with another vehicle, Tyler pulls the narrator out from the driver's side of the car, highlighting the fact that he was driving the car all along, without a Brad Pitt in sight. Number 9, pub names foreshadow major events. The World's End. If you didn't know already, the sci-fi comedy drama thriller thing known as The World's End is a story based around a group of pals who set out to finally complete the Golden Mile. Obviously, things don't exactly go to plan this time round either. But a quick recapping of the names of the chosen 12 pubs that were listed off by the man-child that is Gary King in the film's opening sequence actually informs you early on what level of madness is to come and what order it will arrive in. The first post is obviously the place where the team have their first tipple. The Old Familiar has the same layout as the first pub. The Famous Cock is the first spot Gary, the cock, is recognised at. The Crossed Hand sees the team work together for the first time in the film. Crossed hands usually signify teamwork. The unit pretend to be having a good time to not draw attention to themselves in The Good Companions. And, well, yeah, I could go on, but you get the idea, and oh, what a magnificent idea it is. Number 8, a gold tooth tells you all you need to know. Coco. It's fairly easy to find yourself being blinded by the absolutely stunning Land of the Dead that Pixar managed to, ironically, bring to life during 2017's Coco. However, if you take a minute to stop humming the damn tune to Remember Me, the film's big twist was actually on show for all to see from fairly early on in the runtime. From the moment we're introduced to Ernesto de la Cruz's pale white guitar, those with a keen eye for detail will have spotted that the instrument's headstock is sporting a skull with one golden tooth. Eventually, we come to learn that none other than Hector, a trickster Miguel meets during his adventure in the Land of the Dead, was the person behind Ernesto's crowd-pleasing music. He was ultimately poisoned by his partner and had both his guitar and songs stolen from him, both of which he used to become a world-famous artist. Yet this shocking revelation was actually cleverly foreshadowed the second Hector rocked up on our screen, as the character is seen sporting a golden tooth which mirrors the one on what turns out to be his guitar. Damn Pixar, you did it again. Number 7, Mr. Orange's true colors are revealed in the first 20 minutes. Reservoir Dogs. Although Quentin Tarantino's movies have become more and more dense as time has gone on, or I may have just got more idiotic over time. Either or. The writer-director has been scattering all sorts of tidbits throughout his features since his debut. And here's one that just might blow your damn mind if you're unlucky enough to have not yet been exposed to its genius up until this mighty moment. In one of Reservoir Dogs' earliest scenes, Mr. Pink and Mr. White can be seen talking in a bathroom back at the infamous warehouse, discussing the diamond heist gone wrong. If you look closely behind them though, you can see that there are pink and white soap bottles next to one another and separate from the rest, orange ones. On top of this, Mr. Orange also grasses on Mr. Pink earlier in the film, during the opening diner scene for not coughing up a tip. Combined, both of these little beats tell us that Mr. Orange is most likely not on the same side as our robbers. Number 6, the name Kaiser Soze actually explains who the real villain is, the usual suspects. Audiences were left absolutely stunned when Bryan Singer's crime thriller The Usual Suspects ended with a shocking plot twist that revealed that the harmless narrator of our story, poor crippled verbal Kint, was actually the criminal mastermind we'd spent the entire story searching for. And although most English-speaking folks probably didn't guess the twist before the movie ended, Turkish speakers might have had a bit of extra help. You see, the name Kaiser Soze actually works as a legitimate clue as to the identity of the real Kaiser Soze, given that in Turkish, Soze means talks too much, or when translated more closely, verbal. As we've touched upon already, verbal is the name of the character who is in actuality Kaiser Soze, which means that all the information anybody needed to clock who the real big bad was sitting right there in the name. So there you have it, a vital clue unearthed and a little bit of Turkish to send you on your way. Number 5, Dick Halloran's death is foreshadowed via Danny's toy, The Shining. In The Shining, a writer named Jack Torrance takes a job as a winter caretaker at a secluded hotel and brings his family along for the ride. What a delightful family feature this could have been, eh? There they meet a friendly guy named Dick Halloran, who ultimately introduces young Danny Torrance to the world of Shining via telepathy. As the true nature of the disturbing hotel comes to light, however, Jack is ultimately driven insane to the point in which he tries to brutally murder his wife and son. Happens to the best of us. The film's director, Stanley Kubrick, was renowned for his obsessive attention to detail. However, one of the most subtle of these tidbits that the director laced into the horror classic came in the form of what appeared to be a meaningless shot of a red jumper-wearing teddy bear on the ground. Yet by the time the aforementioned Halloran is murdered by the deranged Jack, it soon becomes clear that this was no throwaway prop. Halloran is actually killed in the exact same spot the bear was dropped by Danny beforehand, a moment which acted as an eerie piece of foreshadowing in regards to Halloran's eventual bloody fate. Number 4, X marks the spot, The Departed. Martin Scorsese's 2006 crime epic, The Departed, is a feature centered largely around the Boston police's attempts to infiltrate the Irish mob. And while the feature is crammed full of twists and turns, if you look closely enough, there's often a giveaway clue that signals an incoming emphatic end for many of the characters we come to know. As a nod to the original 1932 iteration of Scarface, Scorsese planted an ominous X symbol into many of his scenes as a way of foreshadowing the eventual demise of the person involved. We see this on countless occasions throughout the feature. The eventually picked off Frank Costello walks past a pair of crossed beams early on. Colin Sullivan meets many a cross during his spell in the flick, including a nice big red one on the carpet just as he opens the door to his dramatic conclusion, and the list goes on. In short, X most definitely marks the spot in this world of deceit and double crosses. There's another! So why not take a shot every time you spot one on your next rewatch? Fun for all the family, I tell ya. Number 3, Norman Bates tells the truth about his mother early on, Psycho. Psycho is arguably the greatest horror movie of all time, one which defied conventions and gave no qualms about killing off its protagonist 40 minutes in. Serves you right for caring. And the film's Norman Bates character remains one of cinema's most popular villains, mostly because he's so darn unsettling. A feeling brought about mainly due to the fact that he has an unhealthy obsession with his mother, who he's been preserving in the basement of his house. Had Marion Crane been a little more astute though, she might have picked up on what was happening way before that infamous shower scene ever took place. Given that Bates describes his mother as being as harmless as one of those stuffed birds, referring to the taxidermy preserved animals in the parlor when they're both having dinner. This is more on the money than Marion or any of us experiencing a first watch of the flick probably suspects, given that she's actually exactly like one of those stuffed birds. Grim. Number 2, a seatbelt joke hints that the dinosaurs can reproduce. Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is a groundbreaking movie that asks the question, just how long would it take for a bunch of humans to get eaten if dinosaurs once again walked the earth? Well, that amongst other things. Having traveled to a secure island resort filled with genetically engineered dinosaurs, Dr. Alan Grant and his dino-loving mates suddenly find themselves caught in the middle of that query. when the dinos escape from their enclosures and everyone discovers that they've also been breeding, which was thought to be impossible given that they've all been made female on purpose. It turns out that frog DNA was used to fill in the genetic gaps. And some frogs can't actually change their genders, they're rascals. It's a neat little plot point, and one that is also hinted at in an incredibly subtle manner during the helicopter trip to said island. Faced with 2 buckles on his seatbelt and no clasp, Dr. Grant improvises and ties them together, thus creating the perfect metaphor for what will eventually happen when 2 female dinosaurs adapt and change genders. Number 1, Ed reveals the whole plot in a brief line of dialogue, Shaun of the Dead. On top of a brilliant reimagining of the zombie apocalypse concept, Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead is also packed with genius moments of foreshadowing. There are some that were bound to go over your head the first time you saw them, however, including this one, which just happens to sum up the entire plot of the movie in a single speech. Spoilers much? Am I right? Think back to when Ed casually lays out the plans for a night out towards the beginning of the movie, in an attempt to get Shaun out of his state of depression. In a few sentences, he describes what they should get up to. A Bloody Mary first thing, a bite at the king's head, couple at the little princess, stagger back here, and bang back at the bar for shots. Though at first it just seems like a nice summary of a potentially hilarious evening for 2 pals, it's actually laying out the beats of the story in a surprisingly substantial amount of detail. Firstly, the Bloody Mary refers to the zombie that they accidentally kill in the garden. Yes, her name is Mary. Then there's the bite at the king's head, which references the scene where Shaun's stepdad Philip gets bitten, followed by the nod to the couple, which alludes to the part where Shaun reunites with ex-girlfriend Liz. The group then pretend to be zombies en route to invading the Winchester, staggering back into the pub. And there's finally a reference to shots at the bar, which is precisely what happens when they find a gun at the Winchester and end up facing off against the undead. Genius, I tell you, absolutely genius.